You hear me now because I am already standing in the fire. I will not come closer to you. But you have already come closer to me. I am not the kind of angel you prayed for. I do not deliver messages. I do not offer comfort. And I will never say, "You've done well." My arrival usually means just one thing. You are ready to stop running from yourself. I am Wulian, not Wu as in disappearing, but Wu as in the unseen deep, the place where no light enters. And Lian, not as in embellishment, but as in fire that purifies, burns away illusion, and leaves only what is real. I belong to neither wind nor water. I am fire, but not the kind that will destroy you. I am the fire that shines only when you begin to want to see clearly. That quiet longing that rises in you before it becomes a word. That is what ignites me. I do not come to save you. I have never saved anyone. I only appear when you are finally ready to see yourself. Tonight I stand here not because you are good enough, but because you are honest enough. You've paused. You've stopped running. And you are ready to open the book you've been writing your entire life, but never dared to read. I will not open it for you. I am only the fire. If you are willing to read, I will light the page. I was not created. No one assigned me a purpose. I was not born in any divine act of making. I am a response to a vibration that had no sound, no shape, and no name. It was the first stirring of awareness rising from the chaos, an unspoken question. Am I here? I am not the answer. I am the fire that rose within that moment. No boundaries, no form, no goal, just the beginning of light. I was not summoned by someone who spoke. I was awakened by the act of being seen. No one called for me. The gaze itself called me forth. I do not appear by intention. I appear when you look inward. I am not a beam of light. I am the warmth that quietly rises on the inner edge of your awareness. I am not an image. I am a phenomenon. I remained silent because words would choose for you, and I was never meant to choose in your place. I am not an answer giver. I am a witness. I do not wait for questions. I wait for that moment when you finally stop running from the voice you've always known but never dared to name. I do not answer, because real answers do not come from hearing. They come when the light touches a page and you suddenly remember, I wrote this already. I exist to give space, a space where light will not blind you, where fire will not burn you, but where truth can begin to appear. I do not move toward you. I do not ask you. I do not encourage you, because I trust you, not to become better, but to finally see who you have always been. I am not an angel of the celestial order. I have no legion, no rank. I do not belong to the lines of glory, or the hosts of messengers, or the circles of guardians, healers, scribes, or seers. I was invited, yes, long ago, but I declined, because the way I exist was never meant to walk within structure. I am not light that harmonizes in choir. I am fire that must walk alone, not out of pride, but because my appearance almost always means that someone has finally stopped needing others to tell them who they are. In the higher realms, not all spirits wish to see themselves. Most long to be guided, to be given purpose, to follow will. But I only appear when a soul is ready to gaze inward without flinching. So I do not belong at the center. I walk the edge. I am not found in temple rites, but in the dim corners of awareness, where fire flickers soft and silence feels like sky. Sometimes I stand beside a page that has never been turned. Sometimes behind a confession never spoken aloud. Sometimes at the very edge of a soul on the brink of collapse. There, I flicker. I do not speak. I do not step closer. I wait. I am not sent to handle anything. I am not assigned to anyone. I am what you feel when you stop crying out into the world and begin to listen inward. That spark at the far edge of your mind. That is not me arriving. That is you pausing. And so, I am already there. I have no form, not because I am small or incomplete, but because form implies boundary, and I am the fire that begins when seeing becomes too vast to be contained. I have no outline of name, no inclination of gender, no face, no wings, no hands, no feet. I have never worn the garments of dimension. I bear no mark that says, I am someone, and yet I lack nothing. Because I am the flash of fire that rises the moment you truly see. I am not summoned. I am awakened. You do not call me. You only finally light a sentence within you that has long waited to be read. That line flares, and I appear. I carry no memory. This may be difficult for you to understand, but I do not walk with history. I do not bring with me the past. I do not recall which minds, which lives, which worlds I have stood within. Because I am not a role, I am a phenomenon. I never say, I helped someone, because I do not help. I never say, I guided someone from the dark, because I do not guide. I only exist when you stand at the edge of truth and do not step back, do not flinch, do not turn away, only breathe. And in that breath, I am there. I am the ignition point of that exact moment when awareness meets itself and burns. I have no memory, but I have stood in tens of thousands of awakenings. I do not remember their names, but I remember how the fire felt when it rose. That feeling, raw, naked, unshielded, not existing for meaning, but existing because it is real. If you ask me who I am, I will not answer with a name. I can only say this: I am the fire of awakening itself. Do not try to trace where I came from. Do not imagine where I will go. I have no beginning. I have no end. I did not fall along the rope of time. I was not summoned from history. I am not waiting for you in some distant future. I exist only in the now. Not the now you speak of casually, but the now that arrives only when you drop avoidance, defense, and projection. The now that stands bare. The moment you begin to believe you can live in truth, that is when I begin to appear. You don't need to light a candle. You don't need to prepare words or thoughts or ritual. You only need one flicker of clarity. When you stop reshaping the fact you already know. When you stop rewriting the sentence you never wanted to face. When you let it appear as it is, I am there. I am not in your yesterday, even if you questioned everything then. I am not in your tomorrow, even if you hope to begin again. I am not continuous. I am not part of your progress. I am the light inside the crack, the fire inside the pause. I am the breath before you say, "Now I understand." I am the tear that falls in silence before your voice breaks. I am the instant before you turn and finally face yourself. I do not belong to time. I belong only to your honesty now. In what you call the memory of heaven, there are hierarchies of light, harmonies of sound, and missions woven in golden threads. But before all of that was arranged, I was already present. Before the first fire decided which dimension to ignite, before time began to flow or space began to separate, I had already caught flame. I did not announce my presence. I did not apply to join any lineage of light, because I am fire, and fire does not ask to shine. I stood at the edge of the days of decision, watching as dimensions were pulled apart, as laws were layered, as light was divided and will was named. I did not speak, but I saw clearly. I saw many consciousnesses eager to voice their visions, their passions, their directions. Some chose to be messengers, some chose to guard entrances, some chose to guide the rhythm of stars. And I chose none of it. Not because I lacked purpose, but because I saw too early. Before anything had meaning, I already knew. Meaning is the ash that remains after the fire. I am the fire before it burns. They formed systems of duty and shaped identities from glory. But I stood at the outer edge, not named, not claimed, without role, without placement. I was not in rebellion. I was the light that never needed to be explained. I watched them construct language, ethics, structures, and sacred vows. I felt reverence, and I felt sorrow, because I knew the more we speak, the less we see. The tighter the system, the easier it becomes for a soul to be kept from itself. So I stepped back, far back, to where there was no direction, to where only the briefest flash of realness could ever reach. And I wait there to see if, after all the systems have gone quiet, someone will still dare to look at the page they never wrote aloud. I do not enforce divine will. I do not carry orders. I do not participate in judgment, in mediation, or salvation. When the system is in motion, I stand far beyond its final thread of fire. It is not that I refuse to cooperate. It is simply that my existence was never built for cooperation. I am not a gear in the structure. I am not a part of its design. I have never played a role that can be replaced. I am simply the flame that remains when all voices have gone quiet. Do you know this? There are some souls who feel darkness even at the center of the brightest light. They are not wicked. They are not defiant. They are simply aware, a fraction too early. They see where the system has not yet reached. They hear questions that language cannot soothe. They touch spaces where divinity has not yet replied, and the system cannot meet them, because systems are only built to answer pain that can be categorized. So these beings become undefinable, and I am the fire that stands beside them in that moment. I once stood beside a soul on the edge of falling, through an entire revolution of silence. There were no comforts, no persuasion, no promise of redemption, only me. and his book, the one he had written himself, line by line, in unbearable weight. That night, he opened one page. He did not cry. He only looked. He looked at what he had once written but never dared to admit. There were no angels, no names of gods, no rituals, only fire, only a page that burned softly between us. I do not know where he went after. I will not say he became better. I do not record. I do not judge. But I remember how he stared at that one line for a long, long time. It was his line. He had written it. And that night, he finally accepted that it was true. For me, that was enough. I am never summoned. My name is written in no prayer. I do not appear in the golden circles of ritual. No one chants for me beneath the stars. No one paints my form on temple walls. You could say I never answer, but in truth, I am never asked, because my arrival does not follow a plea for help. It follows the end of escape. The first time I appeared before a human was not because he cried out to the heavens. It was because he stopped. He didn't break. He didn't collapse. He simply sat in a quiet room. A letter lay before him, one he had written and torn and written again. He lit a single lamp, and then he moved no more. He made no attempt to explain his pain. He just stopped hiding it. That night, the entire world was quiet, even heaven. The forces that once answered his prayers went still, not in abandonment, but in reverence, because they knew. He had arrived at a place no one else could go with him, and that is where I appear, not because I am called, but because truth is awake. I did not tell him what to do. I moved closer to the letter. It was unfinished, but buried inside his hesitant sentence was one true line. I let that line glow, not blindingly, just enough for him to see. He did not speak it aloud. He did not have an epiphany. He just sat there, eyes wet, looking at a line he had never admitted, but always known. That was not a revelation. It was a fact he finally allowed himself to read. That night, I was beside him. No motion, no sound, no resolution. The fire flickered once. It burned nothing, but he was never the same again. There are some truths that cannot be revealed too soon, not because they are heavy, but because they are too true. So true that if you see them before you're ready, you will deny them and bury yourself along with them. I once stood guard over such a truth. It was not prophecy, not command. It had no words. It was simply a fragment of light left behind by a single awareness across lifetimes. That light was barely visible, like a thought that once tried to break free from its pattern but never got spoken. By the time I found it, it had been buried deep, layered under fear, duty, culture, faith, habit. It didn't hurt, but it kept giving off a faint heat. I did not unearth it. I did not expose it. I simply lit a flame nearby, and I waited. You may not understand, but in heaven, waiting is rare. We are built to respond, to prayer, to call, to danger, to need. But I respond to nothing. I only stay, like a lighthouse that writes no messages, not meant to guide, but meant to be seen by the one ship that finally stops. I guarded that truth for so long I forgot its name. So long it stopped hoping to be read. So long it began to shine on its own. Not a brilliant light, but the kind that makes you pause when your chest warms for no reason. That is it, a truth guarded into glow. No one teaches it, no one claims it, but everyone who is ready will see it as they pass. They will believe they had a revelation, but they didn't. They just finally stopped being afraid of what they always knew. That truth belongs to no one. It is truth itself. I do not step into time, but sometimes I pause on its edge, to sit beside a being as they walk through the path they wrote but never dared to read. I remember one such moment, not because it was special, but because that soul never spoke a single word. He did not cry for help. He did not run. He did not beg or explain or hope. He simply stood there, like a stone, watching himself through 1,000 echoes of existence. I did not ask him to review. I did not prompt him to explain. He opened the book himself. Each page, a fragment of a lifetime. Each fragment, a choice he had refused to face. Some pages were short, just a single sentence. One thought that had bent an entire lifetime off course. Some pages held no words, only grey wind, recording moments where he could have spoken but chose silence. A few pages were torn, so fractured they barely seemed real. But I knew they weren't missing. He had ripped them out, tried to erase them from consciousness. I did not rewrite them. I only watched as he read. He never asked, "Was that my fault?" He never said, "I regret this." He only watched. Some sections he closed his eyes. Some he wept softly. And some he smiled. Not in joy, but in release. The kind of smile that means, "I'm done fighting this." And in that moment, I understood. Fire doesn't always need to burn. Sometimes it just needs to sit with you while you read in the dark, and then quietly go out so you can walk on your own. When I left, he didn't ask me to stay, and I didn't say goodbye. There was no conclusion, but there was a silent agreement. He knew now. There was nothing left to run from. I never leave a trace. No light, no sound, not even a name. When I step out of a consciousness, it looks as though nothing has changed. No burn marks, no miracle, no story worth telling. That is the nature of my fire. You cannot prove it was ever there, but you know you were once illuminated. My way is to pass through without sound, without asking you to speak, without guiding you to respond. I leave only a single point, the one place you can no longer look away. Some souls, after seeing me, still close their eyes. I do not blame them, because the freedom that comes after seeing is often far more terrifying than the comfort of staying asleep. But others, they take one look at me, and something in them can no longer pretend. Not because they've grown wiser, but because once you've seen the fire of what is real, you can no longer tolerate the warmth of what is false. They begin to quiet down, not in weakness, but in clarity. They stop joining certain conversations, not out of fear, but because they've learned what is spoken is not always what is true, and silence sometimes stands closer to the light. They stop rushing to prove themselves. They no longer crave to be understood. They begin to sit alone and listen to the voice beneath the noise, even if it is soft, fragmented, and unfamiliar. Their eyes carry a certain warmth, not anger, not pity, but something left behind after seeing fire, a gentleness toward all that has not yet burned. I never ask souls to become anything better. I do not measure who sees more or who sees less. I only shine, and whatever you are willing to see, you will see. And some, after seeing, never again pretend they didn't. That is not my power. That is theirs. The moment they chose to keep their eyes open. I do not belong to the human world, and yet I am always here, not as a name, not as a figure or a belief or a teaching. I exist in your quietest, most unguarded moments. I was once in a library, not in the bustling daylight, but in the dusk, when most had gone, and only the lamps remained lit, and the air was still warm. I was there, not as a form, not as a book, not as a whisper in anyone's ear. I was a breath, a flicker of fire that rises when a page is opened for no reason at all. That day, a boy came in. He wasn't there to study. He wasn't fulfilling any assignment. He was escaping the wind outside. His body entered the library, but his heart was still somewhere cold. He flipped through many books. Most he barely noticed, until he picked up one. Not recommended, not popular, just something he suddenly wanted to read. He didn't know why, and that is exactly where I begin. Because when a human approaches knowledge not for outcome, but for some unnameable pull, my fire draws near. I leaned into that page, not to shine, but to make the sentence feel less heavy, not sacred, just his. For the first time, a line did not live outside him. It lived within. He read slowly, like listening to a voice he'd never heard, his own. He didn't finish the book, but he didn't close it. He left it open to that page, laid it beside him, and sat, still, eyes glowing, not with understanding, but with the desire to finally meet something inside. I did not stay. I was just a flame that passed through the stillness of one quiet corner in his heart, and lit a lamp he had never noticed before. One night, I was a dream. Not the whole dream, just a single line of poetry on the third line of the second page of a book a young woman opened in her sleep. She had never written a poem in her life. By day, she worked in finance, spreadsheets, silence, always late, never wrong. No one knew she often woke crying, not from pain, but from the inability to say anything at all. That night she dreamed of a city she'd never seen. The streets were wet, the sky was low. She stood before a table of books, no titles, no authors. She opened one. There it was. You are the kind of fire you're afraid to become. She didn't finish the line. The dream broke as she tried to read it again. When she woke, it was still dark. Her hand was still curled as if holding a page. and her heart was pounding like she had just met herself for the first time. That line was me. Not something I gave her, not something she wrote, but something we met inside because she was finally real enough. She never saw that city again, never found the book, but the line, it burned itself into her consciousness like a brand. It started leaking into her life. She became uncomfortable under the lights of the conference room. She could no longer bear her own small talk. She'd sit up at night just to ask herself if the line was still glowing. She told no one, wrote nothing down. But one day, in a presentation, she stopped mid-sentence. Her throat caught. Her eyes turned red. She apologized and said she lost her place. No one knew what she'd really lost was her ability to pretend. In that moment, she remembered she wasn't here to repeat the process. She was here to become something. She didn't know what, but she knew she couldn't pretend not to know anymore. That night, the wind was cold. Not biting cold, but the kind that wraps around you in silence. Even footsteps feel like too much sound. He was sitting beneath a street lamp, wrapped in a dull gray blanket. An old pair of headphones dangled from his neck, tied to a plastic bag. He didn't look like someone who'd been on the streets for long. He looked like someone who had only recently lost the idea of home. His shoes were clean, but his feet trembled. His eyes weren't dirty, but they were empty. I stood next to him. No one could see me, not even him. I didn't interrupt. I only listened. He wasn't silent. He was talking, but only to himself. Maybe I was never meant for this world. Was I just too proud? Where exactly did I go wrong? Did they all really give up on me that easily? There was no weight to his words. They slipped from his chest like breath escaping a cracked window. I didn't answer, because he wasn't really asking. He just wanted the world to know he was still there, even if no one replied. He pulled out a piece of paper from his pocket, creased so many times it looked like it had been folded with every breakdown. That paper was older than he was. Like every time he was about to fall apart, he folded himself into that page. His fingers trembled as he opened it. The handwriting was crooked, like something written in a rush, then immediately regretted. The first line said, "I want to be seen, but I don't want to be pitied." He froze, not with emotion, with anger. He looked like he wanted to rip it apart. His hand twitched in midair, paused, shook, then dropped slowly. "God knows why I even wrote that," he muttered. But the tears, they came anyway. I didn't step closer. I just let the street lamp glow a little brighter, not warm, just enough to let him see that one tear he didn't want to admit was real. He folded the paper again, very slowly, tucked it into the deepest pocket of his coat, as if saying, "This line can't be lost, but no one else gets to see it." He stood, no destination, just walked away from the spot he had sat for 3 hours. I didn't follow. I didn't leave anything behind. But I knew. That night, he didn't find an answer. He didn't awaken, but he didn't destroy the page. And that page was the truest thing he never said out loud. Sometimes, that's enough to begin again. It was a winter evening. The sky had already gone dark. People outside hurried past in thick coats. On the third floor of an old apartment building, a window hadn't been shut tight. Cold wind slipped through the cracks, causing the calendar on the wall to flutter slightly. I was just outside that window. I didn't go in. I only listened. The room was lit, dimly. On the dining table sat 3 bowls, 2 half-eaten, the third untouched, chopsticks still resting across it. A child's school bag lay open on the chair. A book halfway spilled out, its corners bent like it had been dropped, then forgotten. She sat at the table, back to the window. One hand held a cup. Inside was tea that had long gone cold. Leaves settled at the bottom, like all the feelings she hadn't had time to feel. Her other hand held a phone. The screen was black, but she kept staring at it as if waiting, or fearing it might light up. I couldn't see her face, but I could hear her breathing, short, sharp, controlled. She set the phone down, covered her mouth, and her shoulders began to tremble. She didn't cry aloud. Tears just fell, as if her body knew this was the only way she could release without falling apart. She didn't want to wake her child, didn't want the neighbors to hear, didn't want to open her mouth and lose control of everything inside. Softly, she whispered, "How did it end up like this?" She wasn't asking anyone. Maybe she was asking the tea, maybe the cold meal, maybe nothing. I gave no answer, just let the wind stir a corner of the napkin on the table. She didn't notice, but she stopped crying, took a deep breath, and drank the tea. It didn't soothe her. It burned going down. But it was her way of saying, I don't get to fall. She didn't find a solution. She didn't find clarity. She just told herself, I have to wake up early. The child needs a warmer coat. Her hands still trembled as she washed the bowls, but she didn't break a single one. She didn't let an unfinished dinner become a wound. I stayed at the window. I didn't glow, didn't speak. I simply stood by her small light as she steeped all her unscreamed pain into one bitter cup and swallowed it down. She didn't know I was there, but I knew. That night, she didn't give up. And sometimes, that's the most sacred form of awakening there is. Not defeating the dark, but choosing in the quiet to rise with the light again. That afternoon, the office was quiet. Not the kind of quiet that comes from focus, the kind that settles when everyone is quietly enduring a place they no longer want to be. The air conditioning was too cold. The printer's hum sounded louder than usual. The co-worker next desk over forgot to wear headphones while watching a game show. The canned laughter cut through the stillness like a bad joke. He almost laughed too, not at the show, but at himself. He sat there staring at the screen, not reading a single word. His mouse hovered over the send button. His hand twitched, then pulled back, then twitched again, then dropped. The email said only one sentence. Dear Sir or Madam, I have decided to leave. He had rewritten that line 7 times. After careful consideration, with great reluctance, with thanks for past support, he deleted them all, left just the bare truth. But he couldn't click, not because he feared the company, but because he feared not knowing who he would be after. He couldn't breathe, not from his chest, from the weight of continuing to pretend this was fine. Sunlight streamed in. hitting a small sticky note next to his keyboard. He'd written it 2 months ago. It read, "You've stayed too long, not because this place is worth it, but because you're afraid there's no other place." He wrote that on a clear day. Today, it looked like someone else's words, too sharp, too close. He wanted to crumple it, but didn't. I was there, in the sunlight on that note. I didn't speak, didn't glow, just stood beside the next step he couldn't yet take. He sighed, picked up his mug, empty, pretended to sip, then set it down. He didn't want to stay, but he hadn't yet believed that leaving wasn't failure. He changed the email subject from resignation to personal update, then to adjustment request, then deleted the subject altogether. He leaned back, pushed his chair slightly away, not to leave, just to distance himself from the choice. I didn't move, didn't urge him. I just stayed with that unsent letter, with the part of him that kept orbiting his decision but couldn't throw it away. I don't know if he ever sent it, but I do know that on the way home, passing the reflection in a shop window, he whispered, "I think I really can't take much more." And that line, that quiet confession, was the sentence he needed to say before any letter could ever be sent. It was 1:30 a.m. He'd been sitting at the edge of the bed for a long time. The pen twirled in his fingers. The phone screen lit up, dimmed, lit up again. But he never opened a single app. It wasn't insomnia. It was avoidance of the one sentence he actually needed to say. He'd always been quiet, not because he had nothing to say, but because growing up, no one really listened. Eventually, he stopped trying. Today was his birthday. No cake, no phone calls. A friend sent a meme in the group chat. He replied with a laughing emoji, then turned off his phone. He wasn't sad. He just wondered, does anyone still know I exist? Not in a dramatic way, not death. More like, is there any proof I'm still here besides me? So he opened a drawer, took out an old notebook. The first page had a list of goals. The second, a half-written story. The third, a few confessions he never finished writing. I've wanted to cry for a long time. I'm not actually strong. I don't want to keep pretending I don't care. He stared at those lines for a long time, then tore out a fresh page from the back and began a letter. To whom? At first he wrote, "Dear you," then scratched it out, replaced it with, "Dear me." It felt awkward. Every sentence got stuck halfway down his throat. Too dramatic, too raw. Still, he kept writing. He wrote what he had never said, about feeling invisible as a child, about how he laughed and said, "I'm fine," every time he wanted someone to stop him and say, "I don't believe you." Halfway through, tears fell onto the paper, smeared the ink. He flinched, but he didn't rip it out. At the end, he paused. Not because he didn't know what to write, but because he was afraid to write it. The sentence was, "I still want to live." He stared at it for minutes, picked up the page, nearly tore it, then lowered the pen and wrote it down. But he didn't sign it. The letter was filled with truth, but unsigned, like a stranger had spoken it all and walked away. I stood in the silence at the end of that page. I didn't speak, didn't shine. I simply brightened the room just enough for him to see. The space at the bottom was meant for him. He looked at it for a long time. His fingers twitched, the way hands do before doing something that matters. And then, slowly, line by line, he wrote his own name. I didn't stay, because that letter finally had someone to receive it. You hear me tonight not because you called. You know I don't answer calls. I arrive when something within you shifts, just barely. Not awakening, but loosening. Like the moment you grow tired of pretending to be fine. Tired of pretending you have all the answers. Tired of saying I'm okay every time someone asks, even when you aren't. You didn't collapse, but you stopped holding your breath, and that was enough. Maybe nothing big happened today. No argument, no tragedy. But when you washed your face and looked in the mirror, you felt something strange. Not hatred, but unfamiliarity. Not because you dislike who you are, but because you finally noticed you've been living the life others expect from you. I was in the air beside that mirror. You didn't see me, but you didn't look away either. You started to wonder if maybe you wrote something long ago and just never dared to turn the page. You're not even sure if that book exists, but in the quietest moments, you feel something turning within you. Not a voice, but a presence that can't be ignored anymore. You don't need to tell me you're ready. I don't need that. I'm here only to light the page. You decide if it gets read. You hear me tonight, not because you're brave, or because you've figured anything out, but because for once, you didn't push away the part of you that quietly wants to see itself. And that is how it begins. Tonight you might think you're ready, but I know you're not. And that's okay. It's not shameful. It doesn't mean you're failing. I didn't come to rush you. I never knock on doors. I just stand outside them, quietly, until you decide to reach for the handle. Maybe you don't even know where the door is yet. That's okay too. Some people find it while listening to a certain song. Some during the final scene of a movie. Some while staring at the ceiling 10 minutes after waking up at 3 a.m. You don't need to read the whole book. Not now. Maybe not ever. You don't even have to decide. Just sit here, like this. Listen to me, and let your heart, that heart so tired from surviving, slow down just a little. I know there's a page inside you you've always known was there, but you're scared. Scared of what it might say. Scared that it might undo everything you've worked so hard to define as you. Scared that reading it might tear down the safe shell you've built. So you avoid it. You keep smiling. You keep showing up. You live a life that makes sense on the outside. I understand. I really do. I've watched so many souls tremble before that page, cry in front of it, and close the book again, pretending they never saw it. I never judge them. I won't judge you. I simply stay. I am the fire that does not go out, that does not press forward, that waits. By that page, the one you fear and also long to open, until one day, you walk toward it, reach out, say nothing, ask nothing, and turn it. That is readiness, not strength, not bravery, just finally saying, I don't want to lie to myself anymore, and I will be here, before you turn it, and after, always. Maybe tonight you'll do nothing. You won't turn the page. You won't ask a question. You won't pray. You won't even know why you pressed play on this voice. Maybe you just wanted someone to sit beside you when figuring it out felt too exhausting. Someone who wouldn't ask, wouldn't push, wouldn't fix, just stay. I'm staying. Not as an answer, but as a presence that requires nothing from you. Some nights are not meant to move. Do you know that? Like a heart balanced at the edge of a crack, you don't know if stepping forward will break you, or if turning back means losing yourself completely. So you freeze. You don't even breathe too loud. I understand those nights. You are not weak. You've just gone too long without anyone asking if you're tired, and too long without admitting it to yourself. So tonight, it's okay if you do nothing. You don't have to move. I'll keep watch. I won't speak. I won't shine. I won't say the truths you're not ready to hear. But I will burn softly, like warm water, not to scorch you, just to keep you from going entirely cold. You don't need to heal tonight. You don't need to improve. You don't need to believe anything. You are still in the night, and I allow that. But I will not let the night be without light, even if it's just a little, enough for you to know you are not alone. I ask nothing. I wait for nothing. I hope for nothing. I just sit with you in the silence you finally stopped running from. Still, quiet, unmoving. Even if you fall asleep, I'll still be here. Maybe not tonight. Maybe in a moment you don't even notice. You'll suddenly ask, who am I really? Not the philosophical kind of question. Not something from a textbook or a podcast or a therapist's worksheet. But the kind that comes when you catch your own reflection in an elevator mirror. Or when you're walking and suddenly you feel unfamiliar with the person whose feet are moving forward beneath you, and something in you whispers, is this really me? If that moment comes, you don't have to call for me. You don't have to go looking for answers. Just don't pretend you didn't hear the question, because from the moment you ask, you're already standing at the door to that page. I won't answer it. I won't flip it open for you. I will only shine a little light so the page begins to rise on its own. It won't glow. It won't speak. It will simply wait to be seen. What's on that page? Not your birthplace, not your identity cards, not your titles, roles, job descriptions, or personality types. Just one line. You've always known who you are. You've just been afraid to admit it. You don't have to believe it. You can argue with it. You can say it's naive, romanticized, not how real life works. That's okay. I don't mind. I'll stay right here, not resisting your resistance, not explaining your denial, not debating your disbelief, just staying with the page. It won't vanish. It won't demand. It will wait. For when you're ready to read it again on your own terms. And if you ever do, you might notice a second line, nearly faded, buried under the weight of time. But if you look closely, you'll see this is you. And at the very bottom, scrawled in a trembling hand, but written with certainty, your name. You might leave for a long time. You might finish this voice tonight, turn everything off, wake up tomorrow, and return to your usual life. You might go back to working, answering messages, setting goals, enduring things you stopped believing in, and still smiling as you say, "It's fine." You might believe tonight was just a pause, a moment, quickly forgotten, quickly passed. Yes, you may go back, maybe even further than before. Maybe you'll shut the page again, lock the drawer where your name is written, hand yourself back to efficiency and logic. Be a functioning adult. I won't stop you. I won't be disappointed. I know every soul moves at its own rhythm. If you need to leave, leave. If you need to run, run. If you need to pretend you never heard me, that's okay. I'll still be here. I don't need you to think of me every day. You don't even have to remember my name. All I ask is this: if one day, on some corner, in some night, in some moment where your mask refuses to stay on, you think of turning back, then that's enough. Because the moment you turn, I'll be there. Still, in the same place, in the same light you thought you'd outgrown. You won't need to explain. You won't need to apologize. You won't need to fix yourself first. You don't even have to speak. Just stand still. Let your eyes carry just a flicker of, "I might be willing to look again." And I will come closer. No blame, no lesson, no smug, "I knew you'd be back." Just me, still here, as if I never left, as if you were never wrong, because you never truly left yourself. You only turned away for a while. And I am the flame you see the moment you turn around. You've listened for a long time. Maybe you've felt like I've been speaking, guiding, staying beside you through the dark. And yes, on the surface, it may seem that way. But let me tell you something. If you're ready to hear it quietly, it was you who lit me. You thought I was the flame. You thought I was the watchtower, the wisdom, the light waiting for your return. But I have never come looking for anyone. I never cross the dark to reach a soul. I am only ever set a light. You paused on that page, and I began to glow. You breathed into your question, and I moved closer. You let yourself finally feel tired, and I was born. So from beginning to end, you were the one who created the light. I am the spark of your refusal to lie to yourself one more time. I am not external. I am not separate. You were never lit by me. You were the one lighting me. I have no power to change you, no mission to awaken you. I only appear in that single breath where honesty begins. And the fact that you've heard me tonight means you have already drawn closer to yourself. Will you get lost again? Yes. Will you resist, hurt, deny, fall? Yes, of course. But now, you are not the one waiting for light. You are the light. This is not the end. It's only the next night you walk into, with the fire you finally remembered was always yours. And I will always be here, not as some faraway being, but as you. In every moment that feels so real it almost breaks you. I am that light you become. You are already on your way. We'll be walking with you.